Just give it a second. All right, so tonight I'm really excited. I was given Donna's number and spent a little bit of time on the phone with her, and she's amazing. She is amazing, and she's up, and it's 10 o'clock in Brooklyn right now, so please help me welcome Donna J from Brooklyn.
Hi everyone, I'm Donna, a recovered alcoholic. My last drink was August 5th, 2000, and it was a very, very, very hot day. I always like to have a starting point, and then after that, I just rely on God to share in and through me. But I was directed to take a piece out of the foreword to the second edition in the big book. And it says that they hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. And it's interesting because I've been going through this book. I went through the big book 4 times on my own for my own spiritual experience, and have taken many people through it. But until very recently, I saw in the last paragraph of that same foreword, it says, all those who have as yet found no answer may begin to find one in the pages of this book and will presently join us on the high road to a new freedom. So I love the way they start that chapter. I'm hoping that we all, get on this broad, roomy highway, and then end by saying if you haven't had an answer or any other solution, you may find it here. And I realize that I've always been on a journey. Before I drank, I was always irritable, discontented, and restless. I do have some great childhood moments. It was interesting. The other day it was raining, and I realized, wow, I used to love, when I was in elementary school, I loved being in class when it was raining outside. And that kind of just came to me because I don't have too many great moments that come to mind about my childhood. I grew up in New York. My father drank. I don't know if he was an alcoholic, but he drank and he gambled. And my mom was a normal drinker. I grew up with a lot of fear. Didn't have much self-confidence. My mom was always angry, and as I became an adult woman myself, I understood what it must have been like for her to never know when the money was coming home, to pawn her wedding ring. And through all that, they found the money to send me to Catholic school. It's probably not anywhere as expensive as it is today, but my selfishness growing up as a kid, it didn't dawn on me the sacrifice they made to make sure that I had a good education. The first time I drank alcohol, I drank like an alcoholic. I blacked out. I was about 12 years old, and there were a bunch of kids at my house when the parents all went to another person's house to party. And I woke up on the basement floor. I had blacked out. In high school, when I drank, I was the person who would wind up on the bed with the coats. I would black out. And it never occurred to me that people didn't drink like I drank. I grew up in Brooklyn, and when my freshman year in high school, we moved to Queens. And I was so full of fear because I didn't know anybody. I was going to a new high school, taking a bus I didn't know anything about. And it's interesting, and I do agree that when we're fearful, that's not what we show the world. We show arrogance. No one would ever be able to tell that I was full of fear. I picked on people that I thought were weaker than me so I can have a false sense of power. I hung out with people that were like me, that didn't want to follow rules or regulations. Smoked pot at an early age. I mean, we were so arrogant, we would smoke a joint before religious studies class and debate about Christ. So in my 13 years of religious instruction, I never got that it was about a relationship with God. I just thought it was praise and worship, praise and worship. And I was kind of suspect because Catholics only offer the catechism. Like, I didn't even understand the Bible going to Catholic school. So I always felt that why are we not getting the entire book? Did a lot of drugs. I thought I was an addict, because that is what brought me to my knees. And my mind never enabled me to tell the truth about alcohol. I was okay letting you know that, I had a problem with cocaine, but I never really let on. I always said, oh, I don't drink that much. I even did that because before I came to AA, I was in a therapeutic community. And it was not a 12-step program. It was a behavior modification program. And I realized that I don't have the power to change me. The only way I were following rules and regulations was because I didn't want them to take my past away from me. So practicing spiritual principles, it was always what's in it for me kind of deal. I tried every ingenious idea on how to stay stopped, how to control my drinking. I did a geographic move. And before I made this geographic move, again, I'm from New York City, and I loved the nightlife. I just loved being in after hours. I just loved not caring. That was my MO. I did the least possible thing I can do because I always had the ability of being able to come on top. I recognized that in school. I was okay with having mediocre grades because that meant that I didn't really have to study that hard, but I would still pass. So I did everything mediocre. And I realized because I didn't have the power to do much of anything else. So just getting by, I just got by most of my life. And a lot of doors opened up for me. People saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. When doors opened up, I did not boldly walk through. I would take a cautious step in. I'd look around. Fear would grip me. And I would convince myself that this was not anything I was interested in. It was too hard. See, my mind is wired to keep me in mediocrity. Lately I've been sharing that I lived in the world of at least. I was convincing myself that having a little bit was okay because at least I had something. But that changed when I came into AA. I was not about to live in the world of at least because I don't believe God saved me from the gates of hell for me to live a life of at least. I did that on my own. My journey in drinking, and I always share so much better when I'm sharing in a big book because I'm following the path when I'm sharing my story. I do want to talk about what it was like, but most of my share is about what happened and what I'm like today because it's truly miraculous. And the only thing I bring to this deal with God is willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty. I don't have to try to manage spiritual principles because I don't know the first thing about managing God's principles because they don't come natural to me. And that was very evident when I did my fourth step and I saw the laundry list of character defects and I realized that was the best I can do on my own. And they say that the only thing I try to do, carry the message and practice these principles. And my definition of trying is turning and asking God. I don't try anything on my own because every day on my own I know nothing. And that was clear because I wound up in a therapeutic community, and I remember sitting in the backyard of this facility, and there was a lot of construction going on in Manhattan around that time. So whenever there's a lot of construction, you see a lot of rats, right? We kind of disturb their peace, so they come out in the daytime. And I'm sitting in this backyard that's no bigger than a postage stamp. And I remember saying to myself, this is the best I can do with my life. And I was surprised that I didn't blame anybody in that moment. I realized that this was what I had done. All my ingenious ideas got me to sit in the back of a yard with a bunch of people I had to live with for 18 months that were in this place because they wanted to beat a bid. They weren't there to recover, or they were mandated. I voluntarily went to this TC. And I got to say that God protected me while I was in there, because there was a lot of untreated alcoholism. There was a lot of sexual acting out, which I had no idea was going on. It was going on right underneath my nose, but again, I believe that God protected me. So the first time I admitted that I had a problem publicly, I had made a geographic move from New York City to South Bend, Indiana. And why did I make that move? Well, towards my drinking career, and I love the way they tell us that we make careers out of our drinking. You know, I look back and my life was literally falling apart around me, and I was spending all of my energy trying to drink better the next time. See, because I lived in this world of at least. Things were falling apart, but at least I had the job. Now, I also would quit a lot of jobs before I got fired. See, I always had to be a step ahead. That's how manipulative I was. See, I didn't need a bedroom set like most people. See, I had convinced myself, well, at least I have a mattress. There was a time that, because, you know, like in Bill's story, he says that he pays the delicatessen and the bars. Well, that was me. I made sure the drug dealers were paid. I made sure my bar tab was paid. The rent, that always came after. And see, I was so slick, I would put checks in the mail, and I wouldn't sign them, because it would take 5 days for you to get the check. You'd have to call me. I can pretend, oh, really? I forgot to sign the check, so I can put another check in there. So that would give me at least, like, I don't know, 10 days, 15 days to figure it out. I spent all my life figuring it out. I would go to bed so shaky because I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of this jam? I couldn't go to sleep. My mind was racing. Okay, how are you going to get out of this one? How are you going to get out of this one? And I swore off that I wouldn't drink. Again, that's it. I even threw the dry goods, because I had to use an apparatus for one of them, and I would crack that glass and throw it in the garbage until I realized that I kept going back in the garbage, picking it up, so I stopped cracking them. I just threw them in the trash so I can pick it up the next day. And I spent all my time trying to control my drinking, and my life fell apart. And it wasn't until the quicksand was right up underneath my nose. See, I really wasn't looking for a solution. I just had run out of things to try. I don't believe that my foxhole prayers were for naught. I really was praying that God, please rescue me from this. I also I did the supreme sacrifice and wanted to commit suicide. I had a wonderful opportunity to work for the New York Times until I realized that I had to take a drug test. So one of my ingenious ideas was I was going to, and I swear to God I did this, I wrapped myself up in saran wrap, put on one of those suits that make you sweat, and I went jogging because I wanted this sweat. I wanted the alcohol to come out of my system. That's how insane my idea started to get. And I realized that I just was so tired that I drank a bottle of cough medicine because I didn't want to wake up. So I do understand that hopelessness that you want to die. So I was the queen of after hours. You know, it would have been nice if I had aspired to be in better places and circles. But as long as I had money in my pocket, I can hang out. And I would literally hang out for 3 days. No eating, drinking just alcohol. That when I finally, I missed Christmas one year. I asked somebody what day it was, and they said it was the day after Christmas. That's how my partying was. When it came time to eat, my tongue was so swollen because I was dehydrated, I couldn't swallow. And this happened endlessly. So I'm going to move up to this day, August 5th. And, you know, just like how Bill says that, you know, that day at Winchester Cathedral, you know, he realized the importance of it. And August 5th of 2000, that was a day that the obsession to drink and do drugs was lifted. I remember it was such a hot day. And I had 50 cents in my pocket once again. And I say once again because I've, on many occasions, had 50 cents in my pocket. But this particular time, there was nothing else for me to try. And I was so whipped. I had to beg to get on the subway because my ingenious ideas, I would have $20 in my pocket, and I would go from one borough, from Queens to Manhattan, which is another borough, on the subway with $20, knowing that that's not enough money. But see, my mind lies to me. And I was able to hang out for 3 days. And I remember I didn't have any money to jump on the subway. And I remember I stood waiting for the line in front of the token booth. So there was nobody on the line, so I can saddle up to the token booth and start crying and see if they'd have mercy on me and let me through. And then I had to do it again because I lived in a 2-fare zone, so I had to do the same thing for the bus. Meanwhile, I have on the same nasty clothes for 3 days. But again, that wasn't the first time I was in that predicament. But this one, I was like, okay, there's nothing, I can't do anything else to control this, to stop it. And in that moment, when I stopped trying, God's grace. See, all the time when I was calling out for God, I was still trying. I was still trying to control. I was still trying to stay stopped. This time, I felt like I looked like this. Now, that's not how I look. That's not my gestures, but that's how it felt, that I actually bowed my head and said, I can't. I felt a power burst upon me that I had never felt before in my life. And I remember I walked past my mother. My mother used to sit on that couch. See, I was in my 40s and I'm living at home. See, I was so prideful. I didn't think there was anything wrong with being my age, still living at home. And she would sit on that couch and she would look at me and she would look to see if I was high, if I wasn't high. And this time I looked past her and I looked her dead in the eye and I said, I'm done. And I went upstairs Now, this must have been God again, because I don't know how I knew to look for for a detox, because I had never tried to never drink. But somehow I knew that I had to go to a detox, and at this point I had no ID, because on one of my party escapades, I lost my wallet, probably left it in a cab somewhere or dropped it at the bar of an after hours, but I had no ID. And I remember my sister asked me, do I want her to take me? And it was the first time in my life that I didn't need anybody to help me. And I told her, no, I'm going on my own. And so I'm in this detox, and AA came in and NA came in, and I didn't hear anything. Somebody asked me at the detox, was I willing to go to any length? And I have been asked that question since that time, numerous times. And each time I just said yes. I didn't know what it meant. And so her suggestion was to go to this therapeutic community. I got my first big book from one of the counselors, and it wasn't a 12-step program, and they were not supposed to give me the book. When I went down to reentry, another counselor gave me an NA book. He wasn't supposed to do that. So now I'm in reentry, and now I'm getting all this job training. See, job training was never my problem. See, I never had a problem getting a job. My problem was keeping a job. But I was grateful because I had been just working in bars and after hours, so I can be close to the drugs and alcohol, but my main career has always been in administration, working in offices. So they were going to close the house this particular day, and if anybody's ever been in a therapeutic community, when they close the house, that means you go nowhere. Now, you also get to go home on the weekends. And I remember I went home one weekend, and before I left, the room my mother allowed me to sleep in was filthy. I was so slovenly, I didn't give a shit. Excuse my French. It was all about getting high for me. And I walked in, and this room was immaculate. Immaculate. So I was going through my bags, and I pull out a bag of crack. I kid you not. That room got so bright. Bright. And I looked around that room, and I saw how my life was now. And I was able to take that bag, and I threw it down the toilet. I'm convinced God stepped in between me and that bag of crack. I also realized that while I was in this TC, the thought of a drink never occurred. And I just realized that very recently. I was not in fear of drinking. What I was in fear of was graduating and going to live my life. Because I don't know what I just did in 18 years that was going to keep me from a drink. Because I was scared to go back out in the world. Now, I didn't think about a drink while I was in there, but I damn sure started thinking about how I was going to live once I got out. And so I started to go to AA because they were going to close the house, and that was the only place they would let you go, to NA and AA meetings. See, when I signed into the TC, they asked me, an intake, how much do you drink? Oh, I don't drink a lot. I can't believe I did that. But I do believe it because my mind lies to me about alcohol. So I go to this meeting and I walk in and I see that people are friendly. There's this warmth. It wasn't like where I was at. You couldn't get people to set up the room. You couldn't get them to tear the room down. And so I was attracted to the fellowship, the friendliness. And I heard a bunch of different shares. I heard people sharing about their problems, and that intrigued me because I love hearing about other people's crap. But I think after a while that would have got old. But I heard this woman share in a way that I wanted that, because that's not what I had. And thank God she came up to me and said, Donna, are you willing to go to any length never to drink again? See, I had been hearing the short time I was going to AA, just don't drink for today. And I was like, oh my God. I'm worried about leaving this TC. Now I got to watch out for a drink. It just seemed daunting to me. I'm like, oh my God. So when she said, am I willing to go to any length never to drink again? I was like, yes. So while I was in this TC, I was directed to this woman who's still my sponsor today, who I still send her my evening review, who I send her my spot check inventory, who I now call my dear friend. And her and her husband were in a church in Harlem taking, I don't know how many people they've taken through the work. It was not in any big book meeting, but people found Loretta, and they found Sydney. And I found Loretta, and I found Sydney. And that's how I would start my weekend pass. Everybody else was going to have quality time. I would start my weekend pass in this TC at a big book workshop. And I hadn't been in AA long. So I don't know what it's like to have God's grace, because he loves us so much, remove the problem and still sit and try to manage our own lives. I hear people share that it's not a comfortable place to be. By God's grace, that was not my experience. I got into this work right away because it was presented to me, and I heard what this woman had, and I wanted it. And so for the first time, I found the answer that they talked about in the foreword to the second edition. For those who have yet found no answer. See, I didn't even know what the problem was. I didn't realize that it was futile, me trying to beat alcohol at its game. And my fear about leaving this TC was definitely on point, because I don't know how to live. It's the spiritual malady, it's the fear, it's the insecurity, it's the low self-esteem, it's the selfishness, it's everything that doesn't go my way. I'm going to get pissed off. And I think if I had left that TC and those mental states started hitting me back to back to back without a solution, I might have picked up a drink. See, because I need to stay close to God. I went through this book the first time understanding that it was not about going through the book just to understand the directions. I was going through for a spiritual experience. That was told to me early on. This book will transmit a spiritual experience that will enable you to recover. So all the while I'm going through, I was willing to believe. And especially when I read the spiritual experience, when they told me the only thing I bring to this deal is willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty, and God's grace meets that, I was like, well, heck, there's nothing that I need to do. Because those three words are not words that produce any change. They're not action verbs. They're just like, be open and let God do what God do. That was improper English, and I know that. Every time I did a spiritual exercise, I always did it asking God to reveal truth. See, my thing is, if my mind could never protect me most of my life and feed me a lot of lies about that I'm not good enough and remember what they did, remember what they did, remember what they didn't do, I do not need my mind to help me to go through this work. I really don't. As far as I'm concerned, you can stay right where you are, because this is not a three-way. This is not me, my mind, and God. This is me and God. So when I ask God to reveal the truth and I put pen to paper, I am willing to believe that what comes on that paper is being revealed to me. And I got to tell you, every time I did inventory and the names that would come up, they weren't from my thinking mind. I wasn't thinking about half these people. No, the first time I did inventory, kindergarten came up. I'm like, well, heck, I sure wasn't thinking about that. And I had a big resentment against the nuns because the nuns put a diaper on me because I had wet my pants. It wasn't until I did inventory in that fourth column, I realized this woman had 35 other kids in the class. She had to do what she had to do so that she can be present for all of us. But see, my pride was affected even when I was that young. I guess the question is, how free do you want to be? See, I'm tired. I was tired of living in at least. And see, I was willing, and still every day I'm willing to give up at least for everything. I'm so grateful that God trusts me with his children to carry message. I've always had people that asked me to work with them. I remember I was in the book early on and I had multiple people that wanted me to work with them. And I'm like, Loretta, what am I going to do? She says, Donna, if you're a page ahead of them, you work with them. So I've been taking multiple people through the work for the last 20 years. Now, I wanted to talk about the Al-Anon thing. Golly, let me do that now. It's 10:44. So 7 years in. See, I wasn't in a relationship in the beginning. So I get into a relationship, and all of a sudden, I'm feeling like a fraud in AA. Because I started getting sick again. See, I realized that my God needed to become bigger. Because I was managing the relationship to the point that I was with somebody that did not have the capacity to show up the way I wanted them to show up. But I was insistent that they did. And I did the classic Al-Anon. What did I have to do in the morning so that I can be okay? I had to snoop and look at his phone, check his messages, check his emails. Then I had to be manipulative because, see, now I found out all this information. So for me to talk about it, I had to, golly, the energy I spent. So I knew what he was going to do over the weekend. So I had to bring it up in a way like, so, it's going to be really nice this weekend. Do you have any plans? Meanwhile, I know exactly what he's doing. I remember he changed the password on his laptop. And I thought I was going to die because I couldn't look anymore. And I knew in that moment that I felt sicker than I did with alcohol. And I remember I called up Peter M. and I said, Peter, I need a woman, a black belt in Al-Anon in the big book. I was living in Harlem, and my Al-Anon sponsor, Lorraine, lived in Staten Island. See, I was willing to go to any length. For me is just what it is, willing to go to any length. I was jumping on the train, on the ferry every Saturday to work with this woman. And I remember going through the big book with her, and my mind still wanted to focus on him. And I remember I dropped the pen and I started crying. And I said, in the midst of wanting to find God, my mind wants to pull me away. See, I'm convinced that my ego doesn't want to die. It doesn't want me to rely on a power greater than it. And it will try everything in its limited power to convince me that I'm okay the way I am, especially when I'm writing inventory. When I have to sit down and write inventory, well, number one, I'm not going to write inventory, and I'm not going to make amends, and I'm not going to be honest if I am not willing to believe that God is protecting me. My mind will tell me, oh, get up, you need water. Oh, get up, it's too hot. My mind wants me to get up. It won't allow me to just sit and write. So, like I said, I already know how my mind works. So, buddy, you can stay over there. This is me and God got this. So when I did the work with Lorraine, I realized that I had been BSing in the third step. I wasn't willing to turn everything over to God. The relationship I was still managing, and I'm convinced that anything I try to manage turns into a big old box of crazy, and that's exactly what I was. I saw a lot of truth when I did my inventory. I had a very deep experience doing the work. I read multiple fifth steps when I did the work in Al-Anon. One day I read to my sponsor, my Al-Anon sponsor, and the next day I read it to another woman. I don't know why I did it, but the interesting thing is the second woman who read it, she tripped up my ego because she wanted me to read the inventories in a different order. And that kind of tripped my ego up, because if you do the work with the same inventories all the time, you kind of like know what you're doing. One of the inventories I did for alcohol, Adrian had given me one of Bill W.'s inventories, which was totally different from the 4-column that I had done twice before. And when I got that, I was like, oh, wow, this is different. Anything so that this ego doesn't try to think it's going to help me. But I realized as a codependent Al-Anon, I had made myself the victim. Nobody did that to me. And I was afraid I didn't have the power to leave either. That was very clear. A normal woman does not stay as long as I stayed accepting crumbs. And I got to thank my girl Vanessa, who's on the phone, for reminding me that we settle for crumbs. And I realized that I was deathly afraid of him leaving or letting go, because I was afraid that I would find out that I was the problem and I would have nobody to blame. I also realized that one of the principles, and principles never came up on my hit list the way it did when I did the work in Al-Anon. I had big resentment against forgiveness. What? I wasn't forgiving you unless you told me you said you were sorry or admitted what you did. When they say the truth will set you free, I remember when I realized that I had assigned myself the role of the victim, I called up someone in the fellowship. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I assigned myself the role of the victim. You would have thought I had won the lottery. But it just felt so freeing to be faced with the truth. God started sending me women to work with in Al-Anon. I was still in the relationship. I wasn't completely like over him. Still kind of acting crazy, but still doing the work. And this was before Zoom. These women in Ireland got my number. I don't know how the hell they got my number in Ireland, but I'm doing Al-Anon work with women in Ireland. And I remember one day I saw an email. And at this point, the compulsion and the obsession to look at his email had been lifted. But he had been using my account and his Gmail account was open. So I said, okay, let me just close out of it and open up mine. But I felt like I was led to look. I didn't do it because I was being snoopy, but when I saw the email, it was from a woman, and I was waiting for that feeling that I was going to die, because that's always how I felt. I was going to die. And the feeling never came. And in that moment, I knew that I could let go. And I remember I waited until I could see this person in person, because at this point I had moved and we weren't living together. And he did what he always did, flipped it. Well, what were you doing looking? And then and I realized, again, another moment, I realized, wow, he doesn't have the capacity to be honest. And I was able to pray for him. There was a bout where I sent an angry text, but other than that, I was free of it. I was able to let go, live my life, let him live his life, let him grow, do his thing. I can't say enough about my God. See, I'm convinced God saved me from me so I can be of service to him. On a daily basis, I don't know. And so on a daily basis, I ask for guidance, for wisdom, for direction, for courage. He's placed me in professional positions that I probably wouldn't have went for on my own. I had an opportunity to demonstrate his life on the job, because to me it's not about the job, it's about how I show up. And I had an opportunity to work for 4 CEOs and numerous chairs of boards, and I'm current. Well, I will be current. I need to make an amends to my boyfriend tomorrow. I knew that I was going to be talking about Al-Anon, and I knew that I was going to be spending considerable amount of time at his home, and he lives in PA. We do a long distance thing, but we spend a lot of time with each other. And I'm going to be in his home. And so I want to make sure that when I show up and I walk in his home, I'm being the best human being I can be. And last night I was looking through emails and I came across this relationship inventory that I had never seen before. So God always gives me what I need. And I was able to do this relationship inventory, and I saw some truth. I saw what had been blocking me off from really being present in this relationship. So I have a wonderful opportunity to show up tomorrow when I put my foot through the door of his home, to show up kind and loving, and hopefully he's willing to hear an amends and we can have a great time together. So again, I am not willing to settle for at least. My God has so much more to offer me, and I want it. It's like being at a wedding banquet and you just hang out at the hors d'oeuvres. Man, there's a whole feast of food. That's what I want. So it's 5:10:56. Boom. I didn't think I was going to be able to carry it for an hour. So I want to thank you guys. Like I said, my shares, when I'm just sharing my story, I go from here to there. But I trust that God worked in and through me. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much. I have asked Will to read A Vision for You.
I'm Will. I'm an alcoholic. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation, what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is a great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Thanks, Will. And real quick, before we close with a prayer of Donna's choice, I want to say that Brian and Mary of Sierra City, California, Brian's got 33 years and Mary has 27. So congratulations. That's a long time. Glad you were here to share that with us on this meeting. And Donna, would you take us out with a prayer of your choice?
Sure. The Lord's Prayer for those who wish to join. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.